Howdy folks, my name is Richie, aka Bog Otter. Today is October 9th, 2017. So we got a lot to talk about. We're gonna be literally, just so everybody's clear, might not know what's going on. I'm literally gonna be talking to you guys all day. So what we're gonna be doing is I'm gonna be telling the story of how I went from basically corporate call center manager for 12 years to doing this full time. You know, a lot of people just tune in, or you know, they'll see that, you know, I have 100 of you folks watching or whatever, and you know, don't necessarily realize that how long it took to get here and where it started, and how, like, you know, behind every successful person that you see on like Twitch or YouTube or wherever, there is some story of how they got there. And in my particular, there are lessons that I've learned over the years, and it took a long time to learn some of these lessons. And I think it's important to kind of try to get that message out there, because it's a crazy thing that when I look back, like just writing this outline, like some of it is just crazy how that's how it's worked out. And so hopefully it inspires some people. Hopefully it's not boring, but I kind of wanted to just do this and see how it goes. I'm going to go back to childhood real quick, but we're not going to start like all the way at childhood. We're going to skip many, many years. But as many of you guys know, I started gaming very early age, probably around 5 years old. My dad brought home an Atari 2600 and sparked my love of gaming. My dad and my brother and I played tons and tons of games together. Atari 2600, ColecoVision, you know, the original Nintendo, and on and up through all the consoles, and eventually into computer gaming with an Apple IIe and a Commodore Amiga, and I just always loved gaming. Another one of my interests growing up, around 10 years old, I got into Dungeons & Dragons, and I bought a couple of basic Dungeons & Dragons sets, learned how to dungeon master, and I would run campaigns literally from 10 years old up until my 30s. Like non-stop, ran different campaigns for folks. I was always like the dungeon master. Loved storytelling. I loved like weaving. Like I didn't buy a lot of like the pre-made modules. I'd create my own adventures, my own storylines, and I really liked it. And I also was into acting. Around 7th grade, I tried out for the school play on a whim, and I got in, and I did the I was in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and then the next year The Wizard of Oz as the Scarecrow. And that just inspired my love of like acting and performing and making people laugh. All through high school, I was in 4 plays a year. We had a very active theater department at my high school, thankfully, and we did 4 productions every year. And it was to the point where I actually decided to major in college in theater in order to try and actually become an actor as my career. So these interests all kind of carve out what I would, you know, those are my major things that, you know, compelled me, right, my passions, and you know, it would fuel later on in my life, like me getting here. The only thing I tried to do early to actually make my career, like I always felt like these are stuff that I did on the side, you know, gaming, Dungeons and Dragons, acting, storytelling. These are all things that I couldn't really make a career out of. Even though I was majoring in theater, I never really felt in my heart that I was going to be an actor. Like, I was doing it because I didn't know what else to major in. I had no clue when I was in college what I wanted to do. Or like, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't think there were jobs for it, right? I went to college in 1992. There wasn't like game design career paths then. There wasn't really the internet so you can search for this kind of stuff, right? There wasn't like a way to, you know, living in New Jersey where there wasn't any gaming, you know, industry. There was no way for me to find out more information or where I needed to go or what I needed to do. I was clueless. So I just felt like I couldn't follow my dreams. I wound up getting my degree in acting and theater. I had 2 small jobs out of college acting. I was a camp counselor at a theater camp, and I actually toured for a few months. I toured doing murder mystery theater, and barely made any money, and realized very quickly I didn't have the the confidence in myself or the knowledge of how to pursue an acting career or the ability to take denial like constantly to do it. So I gave up pretty quickly out of college of making any of my dreams kind of become a reality in terms of my career. So I decided, well, not even decided, I had a couple of jobs fall in my lap. I had a good friend of mine who watches the stream sometimes, Frog Hemoth. His brother was in a software company. They needed some folks working tech support, so I joined that company and started doing computer tech support, like over-the-phone support. So that's kind of where my corporate job started. This is in 1996? 1997 is when I did it. There's still barely game design majors. I know, but you can literally like Google stuff now. Like, how do I prepare to get into game design? It's still a hard industry to get into, no doubt. But imagine like trying that at 1992, where we're just getting dial-up. Like I went to college, I didn't even have an email address yet. I got my first email address at college. It was like so difficult to. It never even crossed my mind like how to do anything. I felt like I was just gonna be. I would have a job to get my paycheck, and then I wouldn't be able to ever follow any of my dreams. That's just how I felt. I didn't know anything else to do. The one way I thought maybe I could get into that was through becoming a programmer, because I was interested in computers. However, all of the kids I knew going to school with me that were computer science majors, they were like miserable, and they would say all the time how difficult it was, and I would ask them specifically like how heavy like math is it, because I was never good at math. Like how heavily, how heavy is the math requirement? And a lot of them said it was very, very tough. So I kind of chickened out. I kind of chickened out at being a programmer, and it's probably a good thing because I don't know if I had the mind for it. Okay, so that started 1997. Started my corporate career. I became way into the tech field, and I felt like, all right, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do tech support, and I'm going to learn as much as I can. I actually went for my MCSE, Microsoft certifications, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. Very difficult test, 6 different tests. I had to go to school for it, and I did that while I was working. I got my certification. And I thought I was going to go into a highly technical career as a result of that. So I got heavy into tech support. I worked at that one job for 7 years. That first job that I got into out of college. 7 years. I got my MCSE. 2 years into working there, I went on to go into the QA department out of customer support, and that was so much less stressful than answering phone calls all day and helping people troubleshoot over the phone. And I was really, really happy, and I thought I was gonna actually just stick it out and do QA for a long time because it was such an easier job. But one of my old managers came and saw me one day and said, listen, there's an assistant support manager job back in the old department. I think you're perfect for it. You should do it. And I was like, no, I don't want to ever go back into the customer service. I'm like, no way, I'm not doing that. And he convinced me. He said, well, what are you gonna do? He's like, you're just gonna be comfortable and take and just do QA for the rest of your life, or do you want to actually kind of advance in a career? Do you want to get upward promotion? This is a promotion that I'm urging you to kind of go out for. And you know what? He kicked me in the butt. He told me what I needed to hear. And I would never have thought I would go back to customer service. But here I was applying, and I ultimately got a management position back in my old department. And it was hell, and it was really difficult, but I learned how to manage employees. I learned the HR side of things, and I learned I wasn't taking as many tech calls, but I would take all the escalations and all that kind of stuff. And I wound up staying at that company for 7 years, and by the end, I was running 3 departments. I ran the client services department, the tech services that actually did the repairing and the shipping of computers, and then I ran the training department as well. So 7 years later, I'm running 3 departments, and I left that company to go work in Manhattan for a bigger software company. And I got promoted directly into a vice president of client services role, and it was really high paying. 5 years I stayed there, and it was a 3-hour commute per day. So it was an hour and a half in the morning to get there, hour and a half at night coming home, train ride. It was in a different state I was working. So I did that for 5 years after that. And throughout this journey is actually how I met Widget and Widget's husband, and became great friends with them. That first job where I was there for 7 years, that's where I met Widget, and that's how we first started working together. So we worked together at that job for several years, and when I went to the second company, I eventually brought Widget over, and she worked with me there too. So we've worked together for 10 plus years in the two jobs together. So, and that's where our friendship started and becoming part of our everyday life. So that's what my life was. I thought, okay, first it was going to be technical, then it changed, and then it was totally like a management. I was into people managing. I was managing call centers is what I was doing, and like I was never passionate about it. I was decent at it. I never felt great at it. Was never passionate about it. When I was able to go home, I would never think about it. Was never like home, like planning ideas on how to improve metrics and different things. Like I was playing video games or playing Dungeons and Dragons, or thinking about all of my like geeky interests and stuff like that. But yeah, and you say I think it's rare for people to be passionate about your work, Marauder. But it was weird because I was like the second job, that second company in Manhattan. What was great about it, there was a lot of people who really wanted to be there. They were like, the company paid well and the benefits were well, and it was a growing company, especially in the beginning when I first started there. There were a lot of perks. There were a lot of like people were getting bonuses left and right. There were parties thrown all the time. There were like outings at night where you can go and like little mini parties and different things. It was fun from that aspect, but you worked your butt off at this company. You worked your absolute butt off. But I felt like I was one of the few people pretending. I don't know. Like my boss would come in, and like some of the other managers would come in, and they had legitimately like went home the night before after we had a meeting about a problem, and they came in and they were like, you know what, I was thinking about it in the shower and the car ride home and blah blah blah, and I came up with all of this, and they would have like stuff ready and prepared that they did the last night, and they would be like, maybe we should do this, and then all the other managers were like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and I would just be like, yeah, but like I never felt like part of that. I never felt like I wouldn't go home and think about this stuff. Like that's the last thing I would think about. Like, and you did all that stuff like when you were home. Like I felt like, I don't know, I felt like a pretender. It never quite gelled, and I felt like most other people were much more passionate than I was about it. That was our friendship is like a really long elevator ride, Widget. Yeah, I used to scare Widget in the elevators at the old job, and she used to hate me for it. We used to prank each other all the time. That's okay. Like, Widget was like my lifeline at that job. Anytime I like needed any help or anything like that, she was always there. But she had this awful habit of taking like a week off and like not telling me in advance. And it became a running joke that I'm like, you didn't approve this vacation time with me. You never, like, like, why didn't you come to me and ask for approval? Like, she would literally, I would literally be like, all right, I'm gonna go get coffee with Widget, blah, blah, blah. And like, she's not at her desk. And then I'd have to like text her or email her, and she'd be like, oh, I'm off this week. And like, I would suddenly have this like sinking feeling, like, no, like, why didn't you tell me? 2008. In 2008, I showed up at work one day after making the 3-hour commute, or that hour-and-a-half commute, and my boss was already there at the office at 7 a.m. And I'm like, that's interesting. He's here kind of early. And sat down, started doing my work, and then I got called into the office. And my boss was somebody that I had known for a long time, even before I started working there. We were actually neighbors at one point, which was interesting. But he sat across from me, and he burst into tears. He literally burst into tears. And then I was like, what is going on? And he told me that he had to let me go today. And that he was like really broken up about it. And it was kind of odd and surreal, because I wound up kind of consoling him, even though it was me losing the job. I don't know if it was genuine emotion that he was feeling, which I tend to believe it was, or a very sneaky tactic. But I got laid off after being there for 5 years. It was a budget cut kind of thing, and my salary, I guess, was too high, or I wasn't needed anymore, or something. I never fully figured it out. After after that happened, I left the office and I wandered around New York City just like in shock for a while. I didn't go straight home. Yeah, I got home and I was really in shock. I wasn't sad that I lost it because, like I said, it was a stressful job and stuff like that, but I knew a lot of people that worked there. I mean, there's a couple other friends of mine that worked there. Over the years, I had gotten like 4 or 5 of my friends' jobs at that work, so I was suddenly disconnected from that. But it's such a weird feeling to have all of, for all these employees that you cared about and you were working on different things with, and all these clients that you had projects running with, and like all of these coworkers that you had dealings and meetings and all of these deadlines and stuff, and for that to just be suddenly gone, like not only the work and the stress and the all the projects, but suddenly like all these people that I had known for years that I probably wasn't ever going to see again, just gone. I was in shock. I could not, I was lost. I was totally lost. I was like, whoa, what is going on? Your specialty was trap throwing. So after I got laid off, I tried right away to get back into the same kind of job, right? It's call center management. I went on a couple interviews that didn't pan out, and I was trying to just get right back in it. And I was also trying to make a similar salary than I was. And I don't know if anybody remembers the United States around 2008. This was the economy collapsing section, right? Everybody was getting laid off. It was like one of the biggest unemployment rates we've had in a long time, a great recession. And I could not get a job. Could not get a job. My wife at the time was a physical therapist. And healthcare always needs jobs. So she went back to work full time, and I became the stay-at-home dad. So after about 6 months of looking or so, we finally just switched roles. We said, all right, enough of this. Let's just make this switch, and we'll keep ourselves afloat. Ultimately, we decided that I was going to switch. I was going to be the stay-at-home dad. And so I went from like managing a team of like 30 people and doing all kinds of client business meetings and taking call escalations and doing budgets and all that kind of stuff to changing diapers and getting the kids to preschool and stuff like that. My kids were, so this was 2008, my kids were 4 and 2 at the time. And I was stay-at-home dad. I became Mr. Mom, Mr. Dad. So, and then I started doing that. And it was really weird at first, and then I started to really get into the swing of it, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. I was doing all the things that I wasn't normally comfortable doing, I probably was doing that for about a year or a year and a half before I started to like really get the hang of it and realize, all right, I have free time throughout the day. Small pockets of free time. Kids might be napping or at preschool for a few hours. Have a little bit of time. Probably for a while I was just enjoying the fact that I wasn't in my corporate job anymore, and I played a lot of video games in that time. I was heavy into World of Warcraft at this time. I was in a World of Warcraft guild for 7 years. I led the guild. I led the raids 4 nights a week. I was leading raids. My dad was in the guild. My brother was in the guild. Widget and her husband were in the guild. A whole bunch of my real life friends were in it, plus a whole bunch of random friends that we met on the internet. So I was running the guild, and that was kind of like a part-time job, and I was really focused on it, and I really loved World of Warcraft. I knew like the ins and outs of this game, always doing research and stuff like that. And I decided that I wanted to do something with video games while I had a little bit of free time. And there was this website called Project Lore. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. There was this website called Project Lore that sprung up during World of Warcraft. And it was a little bit ahead of its time in retrospect. This was before like YouTube, this was before Twitch, and this was before YouTube was really like huge in terms of like gaming content. But what Project Lore did was they were a World of Warcraft group, and they had like a really nice set where 4 people had computers, and, you know, headsets and microphones, and they would play through dungeons and raids in World of Warcraft. And you could see a camera angle with the 4 of them talking while they were doing it. And they would make fun of each other, and they would banter. And then they could also switch to the actual gameplay from the 4 different screens. And it was really interesting. Like, I got sucked into this. I'm like watching other people playing video games. Who would have thought, you know? It was kind of... And it was really well done. So I loved this website, and I thought they did... And you can still find some of the Project Lore episodes on YouTube. You know, and it's very old, and it, you know, compared to today's gaming content, it's a little antiquated. But that was like my first big like inspiration. Like, I remember watching that and going, I really love it. And I actually reached out to the people who controlled the website, because they also wrote articles on the website too. And I just volunteered. I just said, hey, I got some ideas for some articles I could write for your website. Would you want some content? And they actually said yes. I just, like, random email one day, I just said, hey, I could write some articles. And they said yes. They said, give me a sample and we'll see what you got. And I only wrote like 2 or 3 articles for them. One of them was about my kids taking over my, like, I was trying to get my kids to like farm stuff for me in World of Warcraft, and all the ways it went horribly wrong every time I asked them to do something. And so that was one of the articles. And I just was writing. I never wrote anything before, but I tried, and it wasn't paid. It was just a volunteer thing, just something to do while I was home. And that kind of, you know, was the first little spark of, all I did was send an email and I got a response, and now I'm doing this thing, and I was all proud of it. You're like, oh my god, you see, it actually got on the internet. I wrote something, it's on the internet, it's got my name on it. That was like the first little thing I did. What do you mean kids can't farm for you? Have I made a mistake? I had some funny stories, and I've told you guys some of these before. I had my kids doing fishing for me, like I needed raid food and stuff like that. And I left them at the computer while I went upstairs to do dishes, and I came back, and everything in my character's inventory was deleted, and every slot was filled up with milk. They actually, luckily it was an alt character, I didn't need any of the stuff, but they literally went to a vendor and used my gold to buy milk in every single slot. So stuff like that would happen. Okay, so I wrote some articles for that site, Project Lore. And I actually, one of the things that I used to watch when the Wrath of the Lich King beta was out, one of the guys from Project Lore did like a Let's Play. This is my first Let's Play I ever watched. He basically said, let's check out the Death Knight starting area, and he did a Let's Play. And I thought it was hilarious, and I was like enthralled by it. And I actually, when the next expansion came out, Cataclysm, I actually recorded a little bit of footage of myself playing that. It wasn't a camera, but I had my voice on it, and I just started playing it, and I tried to be a little bit funny. And those videos are still up today on my Red Rhino's YouTube website. But this is just something I played around with. I didn't expect anybody to watch it. But if you go to, I think it's like youtube.com/user/Red Rhino Games, you can see some of these old World of Warcraft videos there. But I was inspired by Project Lore, is really the point of all that. And I wanted to do more, and I wanted to kind of capitalize on that feeling I got of, oh my god, I actually put out some, you know, an article. Maybe some people have read it. I was proud of it. But I didn't know what to do. I started sitting there going, you know, I have some time while the kids are at school or napping. What do I do? Like, how do I get into this industry? What can I, you know, I love video games. I love World of Warcraft. How can I share this passion? What, you know, so here was the dream, right? I knew there's something I wanted to do. I didn't even know what I wanted to do with it. How do I take steps to actually do this? And I had no idea. I was clueless. And you know what? Maybe some folks, you know, have a passion about something out there, but you don't know how to take any kind of steps towards reaching it. But what I did do, the only thing that I did, is I started telling people. I started talking about it. And that turned out to be a game-changing thing, because I started talking to my friends. You know, I started, you know, just to say, like, I want to do something. And then I was at Widget's house one summer. I don't remember exactly what summer it is. It could have been, I think it might have been 2008 or 2009. I was at the summer. She was having a barbecue in her backyard, and I was telling. She had some people that we used to work with at, you know, that second corporate job that I got laid off from. She had some ex co-workers of mine at this party. And of course they wanted to catch up. What are you doing these days? Blah, blah, blah. I'm a stay-at-home dad, changing the diapers, all that stuff. And I'm like, you know, but I really want to get into doing something with video games. I wrote some articles recently, but I don't know, you know, I don't know what to do or how to do it. So again, I was just talking about it. There was a guy there who was listening to me, and it was somebody that I worked with in the past, and he said, well, you know, if you want to keep writing articles, I have a friend of mine who actually writes articles for was it the New York Times or the Daily News? It was some New York website. I think it was the New York Times. He was like the game reviewer for the New York Times. He's like, I can put you in touch with him and maybe he has some advice. I was like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, just talking about it, just randomly like bringing it up all the time, what I wanted to do. Finally, I made a connection, just random dumb luck. And the funny thing is, like nowadays with social media and Twitter and Facebook and different things, it's so much easier to talk about this kind of stuff. You know, you can just post about, hey, I really want to do something about this. Today I sewed this thing and I really want to get into, you know, selling it. Or, you know, you can talk about whatever your passion is and you can reach more people a lot easier. But that was the first thing that kind of kicked things off for me, was just talking about it, and I happened to talk to the right person, right? Somebody that had a connection. So I got an email address from that Summer at Widget's house, and I emailed Stu Horvath, and I introduced myself. And he was super, super nice. And he said, listen, he actually just got laid off from his New York Times job or whatever. I forget which publication it was. And he was starting his own website called Unwinnable. And this website is still in publication all these years later. Unwinnable.com. It's a collection of friends and writers from around the industry. They write very... I don't know how to call it. They're very thought-provoking, sometimes intellectual, maybe a little highbrow sometimes. It's gaming and geek culture stuff, but very sophisticated, I should say. He introduced me to the other folks that were there, and he asked me for some writing samples, and I showed him the articles I did for Project Lore. So again, that thing where I never got paid to do those Project Lore stuff, but here, now I actually had some work that I could show, and I showed him, and he went, okay, cool. I started writing as a volunteer for Unwinnable. He wanted me to be an MMO writer. He said nobody that writes for Unwinnable plays any MMOs. They don't know anything about MMOs. They wanted me to write a couple of articles with the history of MMOs. Like, tell us how MMOs became a thing. And I didn't know. I had no idea. All I knew was, like, I played, like, EverQuest, and I played Ultima Online a little bit, and then I played World of Warcraft. That's all I knew. But he wanted, like, the origins of MMOs. He actually gave me assignments. And this was all volunteer. This is not a job. I would spend as much time as I could in between diaper changes and sometimes on weekends and stuff like that, researching and writing these articles. And actually, one of my very first article I wrote for them, they did a Kickstarter after the first year of Unwinnable, where they wanted to actually have a publication. So this is Unwinnable Year 1, and they put my first article in this Kickstarter. They kickstarted it to get it printed, but you can see right here, Massive Origins by Richie Procopio. And this is my first article that I did for them, which is about the history of MMOs. So it actually got produced in an actual thing. Again, completely unpaid, all volunteered, but it was cool that I started getting published. So that one little conversation, just talking about what I wanted to do, led to this. And again, this is not a job. This is not me making it or anything like that, but it's a step. And I had no idea where this would lead. At this point, I was thinking in my head, I want to work at a gaming company. When I go back to work, I want to work for a gaming company. That was the goal. And I was so clueless at this time. I didn't know who the game devs were. Like, I knew Blizzard for World of Warcraft, but I didn't know any other game companies' names. I didn't know, like, that Grand Theft Auto was made by this company, or, you know, I didn't know what a publisher was. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't even know where the gaming companies were. I kind of probably had some idea that there's gaming companies in California, but I kind of probably assumed they were everywhere. I was just so clueless about the whole industry. And so my goal was, you know, maybe I'll make a connection at some point through writing these articles, and I can work for a gaming company when I return to work. That was my only goal, my only thought at the time.